start. Anyway, as always, we'll wait for people to arrive. I do like to spring it upon everyone when I start these things. You'd think I should actually inform some sort of start time. Like say, back in the summer it was really easy to do an 8 o'clock start because it was really easy, not gonna lie, to get up at 8 o'clock. especially when the sun's out like that. But yes. Good morning to you all. Good morning. Welcome. Welcome to another good morning walk. And oh my, can you hear me all at least? Is the microphone working this morning? Good morning to you all. Good morning to Marcella, Brown, Coban. Excellent. 5x5. Excellent. So I have no idea at last week why the microphone wasn't working. Miraculously working today though, so hooray! So GT, good morning from Hamburg. So where to start? Because there's been a lot of Brexit nonsense this week, and to be honest, some of it is generally frustrating, I suppose would be one word to put it. Morning from Grimsby. Good morning to you. So it's like where to start with this. Where to start with this week? That is the question. So I think, as always, when we have a week like this, I think it's always very fortunate that America gives me a good outlet, shall we say, to start this good morning walk, because as you'll have seen, the title of this week's walk is "Oh no, not again." So whose are we talking about in America? Well, I'm sure some of you were probably unfortunate enough, or fortunate enough, in if you missed it, to see some of the nonsense from CPAC. Greetings from the US left coast, and of course left coast is best coast. And I, for one, I'm generally quite shocked at CPAC, because the two standouts were, obviously, you had Trump delivering his first post-presidential speech, but then you also had what can only be best described as the comedy stylings of Ted Cruz. You know, this is a man who basically, people in his state are currently freezing to death. And that's in Texas, where on a normal day you can probably boil an egg on the sidewalk. And he had the absolute gall to this is how bad, Ted Cruz is a pretty bad figure all in all. But to be honest, if you've never heard of Ted Cruz or known of his past exploits, this should pretty much sum Ted Cruz up for you. When the disaster started happening, he packed his bags and headed on holiday to Cancun. And he left the state in the middle of a massive disaster where their entire energy grid was just not functioning or even working. Oh, good morning, Joe from Dublin. Good morning to you. So, and it gets better, because he didn't just go off to Cancun. When he got the pressure on him to come back, he then decided that the best way to explain this, and I am serious, this was his exact words, he decided the best thing to do would be to blame his teenage daughters. I'm not making that up. That is literally what he did. That is literally what he did. And then on CPAC, one of his opening lines was, and bear in mind, the disaster in Texas is still going on while he's there at CPAC. He has his opening line of, gee, isn't Florida great? Not as good as Cancun, but still great. This is stuff you literally can't make up. And yet, they do. And it's just, and the rest of his speech was just as bad. The rest of his speech was just as bad, because here's the thing. The Republicans have just had a major election loss. So you would think, at the very minimum, you would have a party veteran. Oh, good morning to everyone just joining us now. You'd think that having a party veteran, oh, good morning, Alan. You'd think that having a party veteran come on to CPAC would be there to explain how the party moves on from this loss. Instead, you get the comedy stylings of Ted Cruz. It's madness. Surely is complete madness. And that's just one of the highlights, because it was an absolute weekend of absolutely a god-awful atrociousness. You know, they had an event, an indoor event, where there is still a pandemic going on, and when the MCs came on stage to announce, to say, hey, please can you put on your masks? You know, we respect property rights. We're all about respecting those rights. You know, this is someone else's house and it's their rules, so, you know, you've got to put on a mask. And yet the audience decided to start booing them. You can't make that up. And then you had good old DT, the Donald himself, in his first post-rambling speech. That's the best way to describe it. It was just a complete post-rambling speech. Again, it had no policies. It was nothing. It was just, hey, how great I was as president. He was trying to take credit as well for all the stuff that Biden has been doing in helping to sort out the pandemic, in getting vaccinations off the ground, and actually sorting out a plan. Because, as we know, one of the first things that they did was actually look to see if Trump had a plan for the coronavirus, and were actually shocked to find out, lo and behold, no plan. Ponies, just for you. But yeah, CPAC CPAC was generally unbelievable. It is unbelievable. And yes, Son of Vikings just said there, reality. It's shocking where you have almost like two lots of people in the US, where one people believe in reality and the others believe in this bizarre alternate reality. And it's like, how do you combat that? How do you combat against that? It's just pure madness. And yet Trump was there on stage repeating the very same lies. Well, that's also true for Brexit, son of Viking. It's also true for Brexit, you know. It's unbelievable. But that's the reality that we're living in. And of course, this now brings us that's the hilarity, because I always say sometimes we like to talk about stuff from the US just to, you know, give me a bit of a boost, to give me a bit of a joy before we're about to launch into what's been happening this week, because there have been a lot, and I mean a lot, of Brexit ridiculousness going on this week. And it's just a question of where to start. Where to start. I think we'll start with Northern Ireland first. And we'll start with, as you may or not know, a person called Katie Ho. And Katie Ho was a Labour... I'd show you this pony, but I don't know if that's against TOS. So we're not going to show you that one. This is so small, I've got to get the camera up. There he is. He's having a nuzzle. Oh. Oh, he's having a nibble on me. He's having a nibble on my coat. But yeah, Katie Ho, probably one of the most prominent Labour leaders in the Brexit campaign, and she was heavily criticised because she was part of the official Leave team, but she also decided that it would be a good idea to go and share the unofficial Leave campaign side with Farage and co. And indeed, she was on the now somewhat infamous river cruise that Farage had planned with all the rest of the fishermen to campaign for them to leave the European Union, and look how well that's turned out for them. However, during the campaign, there was a guy, I believe he was another MP, called Peter Swift, I think his name was. And this was one of the few times where the border problem was brought up. And he brought up the problem of, how do you solve the problem of the invisible border when, if we leave the EU, there has to be a actual physical barrier somewhere? How do you solve this problem? And he alluded that this could lead to, well, violence and a return to the Troubles, which that part of the world hasn't seen for years now. mostly because of the Good Friday Agreement, and again, thanks to the European Union making there an invisible border. However, back in 2016, her response was simply that this was fear-mongering, that this was good old Project Fear raising its head, and that they were trying to scare people into not voting for it because, you know, ooh, if you vote for Brexit, there might be, you know, bad things might happen. Ooh, Project Fear. Ooh. So that was 2016. Roll on to this week, to which she was on national television warning about the potential return of violence to Northern Ireland because of the fact that Brexit has basically ran a giant red bus straight through the Northern Ireland peace process. And I probably, hopefully, was not alone in forwarding her that very response that she had said in 2016 that this was not an issue and that this was just fear-mongering, scaremongering. And yet, this week we've had very worrying, very, very worrying, because this is really, really quite serious, that the loyalist paramilitaries are now pulling out of the Good Friday Agreement. And the loyalist paramilitaries, hopefully I'm saying that right, are basically a group of people who violently want to keep Northern Ireland part of the United Kingdom. Notice the word violently. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the problem. And that is incredibly, incredibly worrying. And I've said before, this is one thing I've hoped the Brexiteers were actually right about. That this was a bit of fear-mongering, and that this wasn't going to happen. But unfortunately, this looks like it might happen. And this could get very bad. It could go very bad very quickly. And yet this was another thing that the Brexiteers told us would not be a problem. Once again, as we said many, many times on this channel, when Brexit meets reality, reality always, always wins. And it's, you know, what happens now that they've decided to pull out of that? Could other paramilitary groups decide to pull out of the Good Friday Agreement? Oh yeah, that was true as well, yeah. Michael Gove's home address was put on the streets in northern Belfast. Was it northern Belfast? But anyway, it was somewhere in Northern Ireland. And yes, we are returning back to the age, because I don't know if a lot of people know about this. In Barnsley, there was somebody, I can't remember the guy's name, but he was actually from Barnsley, and he was heavily involved with Northern Ireland for many years, to a point where he had a 24/7 armed guard. And we always in college, always used to be warned. I always remember this. The guy who used to lead our media course always used to warn us, whatever you do, don't use fake guns or anything like that around the college area, because his office was literally just across from where Barnsley College was, where his armed guards were, to a point where one year a group of students decided to get a fake sniper rifle, stand at the top of Barnsley College as part of a film to do it. And of course, needless to I say that it didn't end well. They got a proper rollicking, shall we say. They were fortunate enough they didn't actually get shot at. But that's the situation where in the 90s we used to live with. I mean, it's kind of shocking that I don't know if you've seen it on Netflix. There's a documentary called Murder Among the Mormons. And one of the things that they said was, because there were 2 bombs had gone off in a day, and it was kind of weird to hear this referred to us, but it just goes to show you what Northern Ireland used to be like. They basically said, you know, downtown Salt Lake City had become like Beirut and Belfast. And, you know, that's a documentary about something that happened in the mid-80s. And it just shows you how far we've come in such a short time to end that violence. And now, because of Brexit, that entire peace process could potentially go up in smoke. And it's very worrying. Very worrying. Yep, I hope we don't go back to those times in the 80s as well. You know, because there are still many remnants of those times. It's a lot of the reasons why even today you don't see a lot of bins in city centres. So, all in all, it's not a good time. It really isn't, and it's hard to make light of the fact that these people said this won't be a problem, this won't be an issue, this is just this is a non-issue, hardly ever talked about and dismissed out of hand, and yet we now have serious problems because of this. And I wonder if it's too severe to say, but I don't think it might be, to be honest, that if violence should return, I think it is more than justifiable to say that people like Nigel Farage, Boris Johnson, Katie Ho, all the politicians and all the cheerleaders who supported Brexit potentially have blood on their hands, because they are responsible for the restarting of violence to a part of the world where we'd thought we'd dealt with it. So, I know that's been a bit of a Debbie Downer, because I know I have said before that we are all about hope on this channel. No sound, no audio. Oh no. Is that better? Is that better? It's back. Oh, that's weird. Why is that doing that? So, is it back? Is it still? Is it still there? Is it still? I'm still back. Good. Good. We're back. So, excellent. We're back. So, I don't know what's been going on with my microphone, but yeah, it's. Oh, we're having being investigated by some. Yep. Anyway, good. We're back. So yeah, I think a very somber topic, to be honest, for the morning, but it's worth talking about, unfortunately, because that's the unfortunate that's the reality of the things. And I think that one of the biggest problems we have all seen from Brexit is the refusal to talk about reality. And that is one of the biggest problems that we are seeing. But speaking of Boris driving a bus, or not driving a bus, as this case may be, because I'm sure, as you all may not have heard, Michael Gove is now out of some of his Brexity positions, and Lord Frost, or David Frost, is now back in. So Frosty's back in. And this comes to one of the second big parts of Brexit this week. And this is the one I can't believe. This is the one I can't believe. As soon, literally, what was it, a week after David Frost had been instituted into his new position. For those of you who may not know, recently there has been a bit of obviously trouble on Northern Ireland, not just the shall we say the Good Friday Agreement problems, but there's been a problem of essentially being able to get goods to Northern Ireland. And again, this is all down to the fact that there is now a, quote, invisible border between the UK and Northern Ireland. essentially requiring customs checks. Because as we all said, there has to be a border somewhere. And Brexiteers didn't seem to understand that fact. But they are understanding it now. And since January, shops, supermarkets, manufacturers, you name it, have had huge problems trying to get their produce, their stock from Northern Ireland just to the rest of the UK, not even to Europe. So Northern Ireland has been really hit hard and suffer and really badly because of this. And bear in mind, oh wow, oh, thank you, Mini Seven. Good morning. Here's your weekly coffee intake. Kind regards from Germany. Well, thank you very much for that €10. I will definitely be getting a coffee after this, but thank you very much for that. Whoop. And this is this, you know, we'd been warning. This is the part that, you know, this is why I went over Femi's article I did in The Independent about wanting an apology from the Brexiteers. Because most of the stuff we'd been talking about and warning about for the past 10 years was merely us saying, hey, we're going to leave this, you know, European Union thing. So what's the alternative? And oh, by the way, there's going to be this problem. What's your solution to it? And more than often, the response came back that this was just project fear, or we didn't know what we were talking about, or, you know, this is just an exaggeration, more project fear nonsense, and it was just dismissed out of hand. However, as we said before, you can't dismiss reality forever. Sooner or later, it comes back knocking on the door very, very loudly. And in the case of Northern Ireland at the moment, the talks about delivery problems and the like have now come into effect. And so we are in a very, very precarious situation where Waitrose, I don't know if people have seen this, Waitrose in Belfast, not Belfast, just outside Brussels, a British supermarket, has been unable to get British produce. So as a result, it's had to go to an Irish manufacturer, an Irish stockist. Oh, it's moved out of the way now. An Irish stockist, and go, we need produce. And so a British supermarket meant to be stocking British goods and the like hasn't been. It's been stocking Irish goods, which again goes to show you exactly the problem that they're facing on the continent. In fact, more Irish food and drink products have actually been showing up in on the continent. Oh. Thank you, Yumika, for that €5. A lot of people dismiss reality through their life and blame everyone around for their miserable life. That is, stood in a hole there. That is true. That is true. But yeah, we are in this bizarre, bizarre situation. And this is obviously going to be a problem, because the big thing that a lot of the Brexiteers want this year, is they want to try and show how much of a success Brexit is, and downplay any potential problems. So it was seen very quickly that if Northern Ireland is having such problems trying to keep supermarket shelves stocked, which is the main issue, what would happen on the 1st of April when they actually now have to start implementing full rules? Would the shelves in Northern Ireland remain empty? Would supermarkets close because they have no produce to sell? So obviously, the government at this point is probably put into a bit of a tizzy, because after all, Brexit's their baby. They don't want to give anyone anything to say that Brexit hasn't worked. And food not being in the supermarket is going to affect a lot of people very, very quickly and very, very noticeably. So in comes Lord Frost to solve this problem. Frostman, as he should be called. Tumbling through the sky, unable to fly, because his belief in Brexit was just not enough. Or maybe that's his superpower. He just believes in Brexit that much that he has superpowers. Pick your origin as you may. And the UK decided by itself, not consulting the European Union, not going to the Joint Partnership Committee, but by itself unilaterally said that the full imposition of checks would not take place from the 1st of April, but be delayed until the 1st of October. Now, here's the thing. The European Union was actually in full agreement and in favour of this happening. They said that they recognised that there would be a need for an extension. But the thing is, now that we are in this partnership, now that we know, you now have to consult them. You can't just do things by yourself. Even if you were in business, let's say you were in business with someone, and your business partner unilaterally just decided to have a brew on me. Thank you, Brown Jenkin. Thank you for that. This this entire situation is a making of Frost's own decision making to unilaterally extend this period. And the thing is, because you are in partnership with someone, you can't just do it by yourself. You have to go to them and say, okay, we're experiencing these types of problems. We want to do this. Is this okay? And even if they actually agreed, which in this case they did agree that this was going to be a problem, you still have to go to them and do the whole process. You can't just unilaterally decide, we're going to do this, and we're not going to tell you that we're doing this. So as a result, not only has the EU Parliament currently decided to not ratify the Brexit deal, which now potentially puts the UK back into a no-deal Brexit scenario. Yep, that is very real, my friends. We are almost back to square one. All we need next is another new pandemic and Boris dithering about whether or not to put us in lockdown or not, and it's almost an exact repeat of 2020. Oh. But this is the situation that we're in. We're facing back again to a no deal because of this, and this is entirely because of Frosty. This is Frosty's fault, and it should be the question asked of, has this action been sanctioned by Boris? Ultimately, I think it has absolutely been. I think that Boris has just decided to put him there because he knew how much he might infuriate the EU. And as we were saying just a couple of weeks ago, the entire Brexit process is just a process for a complete continuous grievance system for the Brexiteers and the current Tory government to essentially blame all their woes, all their failings on the EU. It's really, truly worrying. It really is. That it's almost like it looked like we had taken a step forward and that things were going to happen. But that wasn't necessarily true because, again, if you may recall, we went over the fact that we were worried about Boris Johnson's government essentially wanting to test the boundaries of this agreement by seeing how far they could push the agreement before the EU snapped back and say, no, you can't do that. And this was going to be in terms of what was seen as a regulation tit for tat. However, David Frost, by essentially deciding that the UK is not going to implement full checks on the Northern Irish sea border until the 1st of October, has essentially put us back into a no-deal scenario. And it's unbelievable. It really is unbelievable that someone so irresponsible, so completely inept, has been allowed to do this. Really, really has. It's really shocking. But this is it. It's just like it's just completely unbelievable because it's destroyed all trust now between the UK and the EU, because the EU have now said if they're going to start acting like this, then we want stronger assurances that Britain is actually going to follow its treaty obligations. And like I say, there is current now, the EU is pursuing legal action against us, which means that we will have to be, the UK is going to be taken before the European Court of Justice. And I'm sure the newspapers and the Brexiteers are going to have an absolute field day. And I'm wondering if this is just the first round, shall we say. Thank you, Yumika. Thank you for that donation there. Reputation is indeed the most fragile thing. It's absolutely, this. I think this is a ploy, to be honest, for essentially Boris to essentially ditch the withdrawal agreement completely. Because what a story this makes. What a story. Think about it. The dastardly EU decide and to punish Northern Ireland, even though they think that there's a problem and they can see that there's a problem, they're not going to help solve that problem. So we decided unilaterally we were going to solve this problem. We were going to give ourselves extra time to solve these problems, and then the evil EU comes in and says, how dare you solve that problem, we're taking you to court. And of course, this creates a very, very opportunistic time for essentially the ERG and other Brexiteers to start calling for a complete drop of the Brexit agreement completely. And we've said in the past that if Boris thinks that it's politically advantageous to him, he will absolutely drop the Brexit agreement hook, line and sinker. He absolutely will. And this whole situation could be being engineered in the background by the Brexiteers and the ERG to essentially get the withdrawal agreement dropped out and make the British public think that, you know, that this wasn't Britain doing this. It wasn't the Brexiteers and the Boris's awful government doing this. No, it was the dastardly EU's fault, because I'm sure that's how it's going to be sold in the right-wing rags. That, you know, it was the EU's fault, not ours. But here we are, you know. Here we are. And it's difficult to say why on earth Frosty has decided to do this and has risked this action. Because here's the thing. He could actually reverse his decision, go back to the EU, get their permission, which they'd said in the first place they were okay with doing. But the key fact here is permission. And of course, this builds into the whole Brexit sovereignty argument. So once again, you can see why it builds into that, you know, into that mythos that they want to build about the, you know, the UK being bullied by the EU. It's really very worrying. Yeah, we are. We are in a very frosty war. But again, this is not good. Because as you may very well know, we have still to go and negotiate with the EU how the financial services agreement is going to get agreed with them. They haven't actually agreed that yet, so they could drop that completely, which would then mean that financial services, just like fishing, will find out what it's like to be completely abandoned by, you know, by the Brexiteers. And our financial services industry is worth a lot more to this country than the fishing industry is. But that's going to take a huge hit to our economy if that goes. And it really is like we've been put back to square one. Like, you know, the negotiations never happened. Like, you know, like all of last year never happened. And it's absolute madness. It really, really is. On the other hand, there is also the positive note that if Britain ever really wanted to properly waste its money, we could send a shuttle to Mars. You know, it'll be cheaper than the track and trace system. And that was one of the other shocking things that came out of the budgets, because that's been given yet another something like £1 million or like 1 point something ridiculous amount for that to continue when it's clearly failing. And this is what I've also noticed as well, how Boris and co are championing and saying, look how successful our vaccine rollout has been. If you really want to know how successful our vaccine rollout has been, it has been because the government has had no input into it. They essentially let the NHS and Army Logistics Corps handle it. The government and Matt Hancock have had no fingers in that pie. They've done nothing. They've just said, hey, do a thing. And lo and behold, a publicly funded organisation has actually done the thing better than anything else. And this is why we have to absolutely push for a post-coronavirus public inquiry into just exactly what went wrong and where all this money went and where it is and why it was so wasted, because all of these wasted monies that we've thrown at this have gone to private companies that have ended up doing nothing with it. In fact, probably made the situation even worse in some cases. But anyway, that's that. So anyway, we're about halfway around now. Well, more than halfway around now. So if you'll indulge me, thank you very much all for joining me today. Please do remember to hit that like button when you're watching, and if you do decide to leave at any point, do remember to hit it on your way out as well. Obviously down below there is a link to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee, or because we're live streaming, you can send me a super chat, as you have seen other people do today. And thank you to all the people who do support me those ways. It has meant that we've been able to up our production skills. As I'm sure you have seen very recently, there has been a great increase in the level of visual fidelity as well as audio audioness. I'm now no longer looking like a Chinese foreign dubbed film, as they say. Oh. So yeah, I think we'll have a long question and answer session today. I think we'll finish off with that today. It's been a while since we had a good proper Q&A session with you all. So hang on, I do worry because the chat keeps on disappearing, and then I have to like scroll it back up to keep up with it. So like I say, if you've got any questions about politics stuff that's happened this week, or any questions about today, like I say, please do bung them in the chat. Like I say, I will try and answer them to the best of my capabilities, or anything else that's been going on this week. Did you get yourself some wellies for the muddy bits? Ta-da! What's this? Kirsten Cruz, at Bowler Hatman. Please look into the Integrity Initiative. Cambridge Analytica, but UK state-sponsored, and America are looking into it. Okay, I'll have a look into that. What is your kung fu style? Tiger claw, flaming monkey paw, crane kicks, or snake bite? I think, dude, you're missing out on the obvious flaming snake punch. That's my true kung fu style. Bowler Hatman, thoughts on the S&P this week? I actually haven't looked into it. I actually really haven't looked into it, and I know I probably should have, but to be honest, I've just ignored it because it seems to me to be a complete spat between what has become to known the Salmonites and the Sturgeonites. As bizarre as that's called, it sounds like a very bizarre fish war, to be honest. But yeah, I've known about the rift between them, really apparently since she became leader, and it has again split the party into, mostly because I think this is really from what I can tell, so I may be getting this wrong. This may be this is an outsider perspective looking in, but the thing to me seems to be it's really a discussion about the future of Scotland, and I've often said that it wouldn't surprise me if Scotland does achieve when it achieves independence. You will see the SNP split up into two different parties. Probably one led by Surgeon, one led by Salmond. Wouldn't be surprising. But that does seem to be the the tact that's going on, really. Do you still think Johnson will go this year? Hard question, very hard question. As you know, I had my 3 departure dates, and one of my departure dates was that he would somehow survive and hang on. And I'm thinking maybe option 3, that he somehow survives and hangs on, might actually be the winner of those 3. How does Starmer get Johnson to answer a question at PMQs? He doesn't. What Starmer does is he should just embarrass Johnson by asking him questions that he can't answer, and then pointing it out again and again that he can't answer those questions. And eventually it'll sink in. Oh, thank you, Kaylee Anderson, for the for that donation. Have a pot of null oil. Thank you very much. I will do. Oh yeah, that's the other thing that's going to, I think, explode probably this week about the whole Matt Hancock being in breach of these of his law. That will definitely be something we'll probably end up talking about next week, I'm sure. Will the S&P get enough to win their Indy Ref 2? Probably, but who knows? Who knows? Like I say, we'll have to see what happens with the voting. Dude says, do you know where Dominic Cummings is? I have no idea where Dominic Cummings is. He's probably returned to Vogon, his home planet. Patrick Hay, why is Starmer still ignoring the consequences of Brexit as a topic to beat Boris with? I think, unfortunately, well, actually not true. There is a story that I wanted to cover this week, but it broke very, very late on Friday, so I ended up not doing it. But I will be doing it on Monday. A Labour frontbencher has broken ranks and has decided to criticise Boris and Brexit, saying that it's not turning out as well as they're saying it is, and that which is interesting because hopefully this trend will continue, and we'll see more Labour Brexiteers break out of the shell and start to criticize it more. And then that might actually make them want to criticize it more. But again, we'll have to see how damaging it is, because Brexit was always going to be a thing of, as it was during the referendum, the benefits of it are quite invisible benefits. So it would take some time for like the true benefits to actually trickle down and affect normal people's lives. This is why it's only been businesses that have been crying out at the moment. But sooner or later, that will have an effect on ordinary people's lives. And when that starts to happen, that's when he seems to want to do it. One of the tacks that has been talked about before was just don't talk about it and let Boris talk about it and wait for complete disasters to happen and then jump all in it at once. So again, I don't know. We'll have to see what his strategy is with it. But again, sometimes politics is just a waiting game sometimes. Any thoughts on Graham Linehan being invited to Parliament to discuss free speech? It's pointless. Whenever this ridiculous culture war stuff shenanigans come up, it's completely pointless and just a waste. It's a waste of time. This is why I very often just don't cover it, because it's just a complete waste of time and a distraction from essentially the real issues that are going on in the UK. For example, why has Rishi Sunak's constituency been allowed to have so much levelling up money when my own hometown of Barnsley is a lot higher on that index of national, deprivation, and yet we're classed category 2 instead of 1. And lo and behold, you won't be surprised to find out that a lot of Tory constituencies that are essentially all basically on the very bottom of these index that don't even need the money are being given these things. As is always, it's been called pork belly politics, which is, of course, you feed the pig and then he remains happy. And of course, seems to be a big ploy to really keep Tory voters happy and give them an excuse to say, oh, look, we levelled up the country, when in fact they didn't at all. Oh yeah, that was the other thing as well. I don't know if people saw, Welsh independence is at an all-time high as well. So yeah, Brexit is truly going to lead to the breakup of the United Kingdom. Something, again, the Brexiteers said would never happen. I saw MP Miriam Cates on Look North. He said that Labour areas would benefit more. No, not a single one of these areas that has been offered money. They've been offered scraps, essentially, and it's not going to be enough. We've always said, even before this, I always said what would happen is either the Labour areas would get no money or they would get scraps, and this is essentially what we've been given. And essentially it's going to be the usual justification of, oh look, we gave all this money to these areas and these areas worked out fine, but when we gave money to your areas, it didn't work out fine. And of course, it's going to be used as a political stick to try and beat Labour with, because then they can say, oh, look, you know, we gave money to these, you know, Labour voting areas and it failed. Guess we all know who you should be voting for next time, right, guys? You know? Yeah, it's just a massive political stick. Jason Robertson, hey, BHM, I'm English living and working in Spain. With all the division Brexit has caused in political parties and people and even families, how do you see a way forward? Brexit has to fail, essentially, and it will fail because it can't survive. And once people realise that Brexit was, well, a con, that it didn't work, and that it hasn't worked, that's when serious questions will have to be asked. And all the Project Fear or, oh, you can't, you know, blame the precious Brexit, will just not fly anymore. Because as I've said multiple times, people in this area and around voted for Brexit because they believed that by voting for it, it would make their lives better in some way. And when people realise that their lives haven't been made better, that they've been made worse, that if we go with what is essentially the quote best case scenario for Brexit, whereby exports go down, meaning the economy shrinks, meaning less jobs, less investment, less everything. When people realise that, they'll go, hang on, you said this would make things better. And eventually it has to be people coming to terms with the fact that, you know, Brexit just didn't work. It was never a good idea. It was a fantasy pie in the sky idea that never had any policies, which is in the past, as I said, is, you know, the awkward thing to talk about it, because Brexit doesn't have any policies. It's hard to criticise more, because all the Brexiteers have to do is just shift the goalposts, and we've seen them do this, of what Brexit is and how they quantify its success. For example, in the past 2 months, we've had over 20 billion pounds worth of UK companies have been sold to what have been described as foreign vultures. And that is UK companies being bought by foreign investors, essentially to buy scrap and make a profit from. They aren't looking for long-term gains in this. Some have even been bought by foreign competitors to essentially get rid of their competitor in the UK. And the Brexiteers have turned this into some sort of a win, as if it's been, you know, oh wow, we've had 20 billion of foreign investment into this country. But that's not the type of foreign investment I want. What I want are foreign companies coming here, investing new money to create new businesses and new jobs. All this foreign investment that the Brexiteers are praising about is and has been essentially, you know, UK companies being bought by foreign investors to essentially sell off at a later date for profit, and that will lead to job losses and will hurt economies, the UK economy, and local and regional economies. So none of it's, you know, none of it's good, and we have to make them realise that is the case. But like I say, sometimes it is, you know, like beating your head against a brick wall. When will the British people rise up? Who knows? Who knows? Don't forget, it's a great way to acquire patents. It is. It is. You are right there, dude. Yeah, this is the interesting one. Flash mood there. How long will we be able to cover the Brexit disaster with COVID? This, of course, was the COVID was the absolute Brexiteers' wet dream, because you are right, it gave them ample coverage for them to cover the disaster that was happening. Sooner or later, the question will have to be asked: why did we take such an economic hit? And that was down to Brexit, ultimately. But when we start to recover, hold on. There we go. When we start to get some sort of economic recovery, we're not either going to recover fast as the rest of Europe, or our economic recovery is going to be so slow that it just basically just doesn't budge. I mean, since the Brexit referendum, we've almost had and come very close to, in some quarters, having zero economic growth. And of course, all that was blamed on Brexit, but the Brexiteers just said, "Oh, don't worry. Once we approve the Brexit deal, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. It'll go away," essentially. But again, they can't keep blaming COVID forever, just like they can't keep, saying that Brexit is perfect forever. Sooner or later, reality always wins. Oh. So we're coming up to the end of yet another fantastic morning walk. As always, thank you all for joining me. Please do remember to hit that like button on your way out. And of course, down below, there's a link to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me a Coffee, where you can buy me a coffee if you would like to do so. And thank you to the people who do support me through that way. So, as always, have an absolutely corker of a weekend. As always, if you can't be safe, be sensible. And if you can't be sensible, be safe at least. So, have an absolutely corker of a weekend. Don't worry, we'll have more videos coming out this week. I'm sure we'll be talking about absolute fantastic weekend. I'm sure you all will. And we'll see you all next week for another fantastic good morning walk, as always. Like I say, thank you. I've enjoyed very much chatting with you this morning. It's very rare that we sometimes have such a long question and answer session, but it's nice to have every once in a while, I think. So, as always, thank you for. There we go. Thank you for. Let me put my teeth in right. Thank you for joining me. Please do remember to hit that like button on your way out. And as always, we'll see you all next weekend for another good morning walk.